Now, Russian lawmakers have introduced a bill to reduce the country's dependence on foreign internet infrastructure. The legislation has been submitted to the State Duma. It was drafted in wake of what the legislators called aggressive nature of American cybersecurity strategy adopted in September 2018. The bill talks about America's desire to maintain dominance in defining, shaping and policing cyberspace. According to the proposed legislation, Moscow must significantly decrease dependence on the national internet sector on foreign infrastructure. The document envisions setting up a national groundwork to keep Russia's internet functional even if servers abroad become unavailable for any reason. This includes creation of an entirely new system of national domain names and other systems in place. On this, I'm joined by Julia Chapman, WION correspondent from Moscow. Julia, is it really possible to create an ecosystem in Russia, what China is attempting to do so, a closed internet ecosystem?
Well, that's what everybody's asking. How realistic is this proposal, really, this draft legislation that has been introduced by a number of Russian lawmakers? And a number of experts are saying that it's actually very unlikely that it could ever come to fruition because it's far too complicated to really implement in the same way that the Chinese have done. And the Russian lawmakers who introduced this draft legislation are arguing that that's actually not what they're aiming to do in the first place. This is more of a backup system for the Russian internet. They're not trying to create their own Russian internet, they say. They're simply trying to decrease dependence on foreign infrastructure when it comes to Russian internet access. And they say they're doing so in an effort to protect Russian internet users from any kind of crackdown. Specifically, they mentioned from the United States. So the United States earlier this year identified Russia and a number of other countries as having been behind a few cyber attacks on US and other countries on their digital infrastructure. And so there are fears here in Russia that that kind of reaction could provoke some sort of crackdown on the Russian internet users. And so these Russian lawmakers are trying to prevent anyone in Russia being cut off from the internet by creating a sort of duplicate Russian internet.
Julia, is it also because of the fact that this the bills which have been created in America and the reaction from Russia is also taking place because in past 3 to 4 years information and the circulation of news has been weaponized by nations, states and security agencies?
There's certainly an element of that, and indeed in this draft legislation it was said that one of the uses for this particular system would be in order to prevent access to illegal extremist material. Now, how that is defined, of course, is the main thing that's up for debate. Who decides what's considered extremist material? That's already a law in Russia. Accessing and posting, sharing extremist material is illegal, and it's up to the Russian media watchdog Roskomnadzor to decide that. And so this new draft legislation, were it to become law, of course it hasn't become law yet, but lawmakers will be voting on it in the coming months. If it does become a law in Russia, then it could give the media watchdog even more authority to crack down on even access to these websites that it deems illegal. Among those, of course, is opposition figure Alexei Navalny's election monitor website, as well as a number of other websites that have information that many people would simply deem to be controversial, but here in Russia is considered extremist material. So there are certainly fears that this draft legislation, were it to become law, could lead to more of a crackdown on free speech and communications in Russia.